Welcome to Indus Special. I am Ejaz Haider. Protests against the Citizenship Amendment Act continue in India. The government remains relentless in holding its ground, in addition to using the police to quell the protests in states that are under the BJP rule. It is also using social media to explain its position and put the opposition under pressure. Emotions are running high on both sides of the divide. A Karnataka BJP legislator, Vijayapura Yatnal, said if he were the Home Minister, he would have asked the police to shoot all intellectuals. He said these people also raised slogans against the Indian Army. The Congress wants the BJP government to take action against Yatnal. The Indian Army's top commanders also seem to have thrown their weight behind the BJP government. Speaking in Kolkata at a public forum, Eastern Army Commander Lieutenant General Anil Chauhan was reported to have said the following, and I quote, "The current government is keen on taking hard decisions that have been pending for a long time. The Citizenship Amendment Bill was passed despite reservations from a couple of northeastern states. It would not be hard to guess that some hard decisions on left-wing extremism may be on the anvil after this." Unquote. This, while troops under his command were operating in aid of the civil authority in Assam and Tripura to control protests against the CAA. As another former senior commander, Lieutenant General H.S. Panag said, and I quote what General Panag said, with his remark, the Lieutenant General put a question mark on the Army's neutrality, unquote. On 26 December, ANI reported the Indian Army chief berating the protesters. This is what General Bipin Rawat said, and you can see the tweet on your screens. He said, "Leaders are not those who lead people in inappropriate direction. As we are witnessing in large number of universities and colleges, students, the way they are leading masses and crowds to carry out arson and violence in cities and towns, this is not leadership." This is what General Bipin Rawat said while speaking at a forum. Meanwhile, discerning voices like the Congress leader and former Home and Finance Minister P. Chidambaram continue to challenge the constitutionality of the CAA by mounting strong legal arguments. Where is the situation headed? The Indian Supreme Court has already issued a notice to the centre following pleas challenging the CAA. Will the act be overturned? To discuss all this, we are joined by Ms. Nupur Sharma. She is the Media and Communication Specialist at the Indian American Muslim Council, which is a Washington-based advocacy group for pluralism, justice, and minority rights in India. Thank you, Ms. Sharma. Ms. Sharma, these are strong words, and top commanders of the Indian Army making political statements is not really in keeping with the tradition of the Indian Army in the past.
Yes, I think it's very unusual to say the least, and it's a sign of the times that all kinds of pressures are being brought to bear on various institutions of India, some that held a measure of credibility in the eyes of at least mainland Indians, if not people who are alienated, marginalized, and have various movements for sovereignty of their own. But there was a measure of credibility that the armed forces have traditionally held in mainland India, and all kinds of pressures are being brought to bear. And this is definitely this is not helpful. This kind of approach.
Okay, so senior Congress leader P. Chidambaram has also alleged that the National Population Register, which has been approved by the BJP government, is different and dangerous in terms of the text and context of the data collection done in 2010. And he actually said, and I quote, BJP has a sinister agenda. And he said that if that is not the case, then the government should unconditionally state that they support the NPR form and design of 2010 and do not intend to link it to the controversial NRC. I would like your views on that statement.
Right. Well, if you give me a couple of minutes, I'd like to quickly place this a little bit in context, because part of what I do at the Indian American Muslim Council is to put out content to counter Islamophobia and to foster interfaith solidarity. What we're seeing playing out in India, the biggest and latest manifestation being this citizenship law, it is now law pretty much, is, if we see it in a historical context, I feel at the heart of it is the fact that Mr. Chidambaram, of course, is from the Congress party, but that the party that he opposes, the BJP, is not just, it's not just a matter of convenience for them to polarize the electorate, to make inflammatory comments, to come up with legislation like this. They draw their rank and file from a very, it would not be wrong to say, a fascist organization called the RSS, the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. They all want to win elections. They will do what it takes to win elections. But these people come from a place of hatred for an entire religious group, namely the Muslims, and they come from that place, and they have this deep sense of historical grievance that the presence of nearly 200 million Muslims in India is an affront to our motherland, is hurting our national pride. And I would go so far as to say that it is a crisis of Hindu masculinity, where they believe that, Muslims have invaded us, they have assaulted and, abducted our women, they have looted our treasures, they have our treasury, they have demolished our religious places, and all this happened because we were not strong enough, we were not man enough, we were effeminate. So now we will be macho, we will be a martial race.
That's a very interesting perspective, Ms. Sharma, and I'll definitely would want you to explain some more of it. But I'm also joined by Mr. Rajeev Jaitly, who is the spokesperson of the BJP. Mr. Jaitly, what exactly do you think the BJP government is going to do about the Karnataka legislator who said that if he were the Home Minister, he would have all the intellectual shot?
Yeah, I'm not aware of that. I'm not aware of the statement made by Karnataka Home Minister.
No, this is not the Karnataka Home Minister. It's one of the BJP MLAs who made this statement. It's everywhere on the social media. It's also been widely reported by the Indian mainstream media. And as a matter of fact, the Congress has asked the BJP government to take immediate action against this legislator.
I'm not aware. We have, there's not 10, 15, 20, 100, 200 MLAs. There are more than 1,000 MLAs, BJP MLAs in India.
Right.
So I'm not aware of the statement who made that.
Okay. So I'm telling you that he has made this statement. It's everywhere. And if one of the BJP MLAs says that if he were the Home Minister, he would have all the intellectual shot, what would the party's official position on such a statement might be?
No, I will not stand with that statement. In fact, our party gives clear signal to all member of Legislative Assembly or member of Parliament on number of occasions that do not make such statements, whether it is BJP's MLAs, whether it is Congress MLA or anybody else. We strictly ask people to stick to the kind of party line we have. I don't know who made which statement on what exactly.
So if someone says something that is not in accord with the party line, does the party take some disciplinary action against that MLA? Or that
we do. We did actions on number of parliament members, on number of member of Legislative Assembly also. We have terminated few members of Legislative Assembly. So we take strict action against those people who are not following party lines.
Okay. So Mr. Chidambaram has also talked about, as I was saying, the National Population Register. And he says that this is a sinister move by the BJP government unless the government unconditionally states that they support the NPR form and design of 2010 and do not intend to link it to the controversial NRC.
I think when you're talking about the video clips of member of Legislative Assembly, I think you might be aware of that Mr. Chidambaram's video is also viral, which clearly says, and the video footage of some media channels, those who were favoring Congress party and those who were against CAA, NPR and NRC, they were clearly defending NPR in 2010. Even Mr. Chidambaram has clearly said that our NPR will follow NCIR, NRIC. He has clearly said that NPR data would be linked with the NPIRC, and as per the statement which we have given in social media and electronic media and newspaper, Congress party's Gazette clearly says that NPR is a subset of NRIC. When they themselves knows that, how they will link NPR data with NRIC. So what is the point of having discussion today? Why he is backing out with his own words when they were clearly said that we are linking NPR with NRIC, whereas in our government we have clearly said that we haven't decided yet on an NRC. We are very clear about it. We haven't had any discussion on this. There is no cabinet note. So why people are making fool? I mean, like why they are making it? I mean, they are just misguiding people in India by making such statements.
So, Mr. Jaitly, let me throw this very question back at you. What do you think, and why do you think people are doing this? I mean, thousands upon thousands of people have taken to the streets. Obviously, something is happening. People obviously are not particularly confident of what your government is doing or how your government pushes through legislation. Already the Supreme Court of India has given a notice to the centre after pleas challenging the CAA.
No, actually, it is all about appeasement politics in India. It is all about that. And why people, in Muslim population in India, BJP is very much focused on upgrading them, uplifting them. We want Muslim youth to get into the education. We want them to have a laptop in their hand instead of,
Right.
So we have very clear agenda. We have very clear agenda.
Okay. No. This much I completely agree with you that you have a clear agenda. Mr. Sharma, you've heard what Mr. Jaitly has said. Do you think that when he says that there is a clear agenda, and as I said, that yes, that much we will agree upon. But the problem is what kind of agenda that is. So when he talks about the Muslim uplift, if we take Kashmir as a test case of that, how does the BJP come across in terms of that uplift?
I think one believes that the manner in which the situation in Kashmir as it presents itself today is definitely a very big humanitarian crisis. Nobody knows where they are being kept in detention, under what premise, under what law. It's winter, it's severe winter there, as we know, and people are suffering in the cold. Medical facilities are not easily available. There is definitely a big humanitarian crisis, and what is well known, of course, is that there is an internet ban and things of such nature. So I think the deeper question that needs to be asked is how long will we continue with this sort of masculine, this sort of approach of so this sort of alpha male approach to holding on to territory, to paying lip service to the fact that you care deeply about your soldiers, when you're making very little apparent effort to resolve the issue. If you resolve the issue, your soldiers would not become shaheed, they would not die. So I personally take issue with the fact that when you pay lip service to the cause of Indian soldiers and you do nothing to initiate peace, and you do nothing for, to understand the hardship of the average Kashmiri, then how much credibility do those cliches, those platitudes of Vatan Parasti or Desh Bhakti, how much credibility does that have? Because it seems to us in today's India that the Hindu right wing, the Hindutva right wing, I should say, to make that distinction, has taken this sort of teka, of as if they're the sole proprietors of Vatan Parasti and love for India. Whereas it's also questionable what their role was in the freedom movement of India. So there are much deeper questions that need to be asked, and definitely Kashmir is a humanitarian crisis. Genocide Watch India is one country where Genocide Watch has issued 2 warnings, where even in mainland India, and this has chilling parallels to what happened in Nazi Germany and the more recent persecution of Rohingyas in Burma, that you dehumanize and you strip them of citizenship, you take away their right to vote, their right to basic services, human rights. There's lynching, raping, torture, which finds manifestation even in Kashmir. It is said you send them to detention camps, which of course are denied by the Indian state. You deport them. God forbid there is the quote-unquote final solution. So these are very real scares for all of us. I'm not being a drama queen, but for as a patriot, not as a nationalist, but as a patriot, these are real concerns for all of us.
Before I wrap up the segment, give me a sense of how the American Congress is looking at the situation in India. What is the Indian diaspora doing, or whether the Indian diaspora is actually throwing its weight behind the BJP government? What exactly is the situation in the US right now with reference to what's happening in India?
Right, right. Well, a part of what the IMC does is advocacy in the US for issues that pertain to India, human rights issues that pertain to India. And definitely, efforts are afoot to raise the alarm bells, to make people aware, to make people in the international community aware of the crisis that is deepening in India. And the Indian community itself in the US is an interesting study because, there is, it seems to me, my reading is that a significant percentage are pro-Modi, bhaks as we call them, sort of andhbhakti in fact, not just devotion but blind devotion. And but there's also a progressive segment that realizes that watches with anxiety and fear all these events unfolding in their homeland, and who want to raise the alarm bells. And of course, there are, if we look at it from a geostrategic perspective, there are ties, there are economic ties, there are strategic ties that are complex, and in that sense, India is, for America, a counter to the deepening influence of China and all the rest of it, which would require another show, and it's probably beyond the mandate of this particular one. But so there are challenges, definitely, but we do feel that the three things we can do going forward, as, like I said, Genocide Watch has issued 2 genocide warnings in the case of India. The things we can do going forward is, I feel, nothing short of a boot to the current regime. Is going to save India from its crisis. So there needs to be a strong election strategy. There needs to be a media strategy because we live in a media-saturated world. And part of how the Hindutva right wing has fought its battle is the propaganda war, which the progressive forces lost. And there needs to be solidarity even across, between India and Pakistan, people to people, because we can amplify our voice with that solidarity. And also there are environmental issues that need to be raised, because I feel when people realize issues of global warming and things like that, they will realize that all this communalism, racism is so small in the universal scheme of things, and it's so toxic. When we are facing, when humanity might be at the terminal stage of its existence, identity politics should not be exaggerated, And of course, the third part being world pressure. Definitely, I'd like to take this platform to reiterate that world pressure needs to be brought to bear on the state apparatus in India, which has unleashed all sorts of dark forces, and of course, that's a dramatic, desi way of saying it. It's been brewing for a long time. The RSS has had what it calls a 100-year project, which is unfortunately bearing fruit now.
In fact, you might have seen the clips where in various cities, the RSS has been holding these marches. It's almost like signaling to the protesters that we are also here and we are with the government, and that's a scary kind of scenario. But quickly, I talked about this last week, and one of my analysts said that if the protests continue, there's a likelihood, given the mindset of this BJP government, that they might impose emergency. Do you think that's a real fear, or is it just alarmism?
I wouldn't say that's definitely going to happen, but I wouldn't even say it's alarmist, because there are people with their ear to the ground, more than one, who have said that 2019 might well have been India's last election, which is a pretty damning thing to say. But these are the, and also, I'm not just talking about the government, the people around me, people in my extended circle, I'm sorry to say, there is such deepening Islamophobia, such deepening Islamophobia that, the ground is sort of ripe for those kind of fascist forces to take hold. And it's just really like a sort of, not being a drama queen again, it really is a sort of collective descent into madness. Like recently I was in Texas, and there were people, they were pro this bill and anti this bill, election law and citizenship law and anti the citizenship law. And the people who were pro-Modi, pro the citizenship law, I tried to talk to them, and I just asked them, what is your What is your mission statement, or what is your submission about this law? Why are you supporting it? A simple question, not a loaded question. And they just shoo me away. They just shoo me away. If you had caught them on camera without the audio, they would have seemed like people with an untreated anxiety disorder. They are just, they're so invested in this notion that being a Hindu means I'm not a Muslim. So what is a Hindu? A Hindu is anything but a Muslim. So they're getting so increasingly invested in this identity that they are not. So of course there are various reasons for why this is happening, and the global trends are also such that there's a shift towards the right wing. There are economic disparities in India which create all sorts of anxieties, all sorts of things. But it's just like I said.
Absolutely. I hear you loud and clear, Ms. Sharma. Thank you so much for speaking with us. We shall take a short break and return to discuss the situation in Afghanistan. Stay with us. Welcome back to Indus Special. Afghanistan's troubles continue. A day after the preliminary result handed President Ashraf Ghani a narrow victory, Afghanistan's Electoral Complaints Commission said on Monday the election might go to a second round as it begins reviewing thousands of complaints the following day. So there's uncertainty on that score. Meanwhile, violence continues. A Taliban raid at a security checkpoint killed 15 soldiers. The next day, on Wednesday, Taliban kidnapped 27 peace activists from a highway in Afghanistan's Farah province. To discuss the situation, we are joined by Muzhary, who's an analyst, senior researcher with Afghanistan Analyst Network, and joins us from Kabul. Mr. Muzhary, thank you for being on the program. Let's begin with the Electoral Complaints Commission. What is the situation? We know that Mr. Abdullah rejected the results, so did Mr. Hikmatyar. But where does the situation stand now?
To come with the situation regarding the election in Afghanistan, so the Election Commission announced the results, and President Ghani's team, which is the state builders team, has won 50 plus results in the election.
Yeah, 50.64.
This team seems quite happy with it. Yeah, this team seems quite happy with the announcement, but the other contenders like Abdullah, who is the main contender, who is the second majority winner of the election, and others particularly Hikmatyar, who is the leader of Hizb Islami, they are not happy with the announcement of the result because they say that there is a lot of fraud and a lot of fraudulent votes are existing. Therefore, around 16,000 complaints have been registered to the Complaint Commission by all candidates. So, yeah, the situation is like that, and the Election Commission is working on taking steps towards announcing final results after hearing the complaints, I think, yeah.
So how long will this process take? And if the Complaints Commission says that, yes, we have found that there's been fraud, there's been tampering or technical problems with the biometric system, then what happens? Will the Election Commission then say that the elections have been nullified, or will they go for a second round?
So still we have time left for the announcement of final results, because to come to the time, we cannot predict it exactly, because the actual preliminary results were supposed to be announced 20 days after the election happened, but now it is announced after almost 3 months. So it took a long time to announce it. The same problems can be expected for the final results to be announced. So we cannot expect whether it will be announced within weeks or within months. So that is the delay is expected. If the Compliance Commission find out that there is a lot of frauds and there are a lot of fraudulent votes, then IEC, which is the Independent Election Commission, that will be supposed to respond to the questions of Election Complaints Commission. So we will see if the election result is nullified, if the complaints are that much important, that are provable for the Election Complaints Commission, then it increases the possibility of going to the second round of election. So second round of election is not possible right now because the winter has already started. There are northern provinces where there is much snow. The snow is blocking any second round anytime soon. So it means the second round, if it is going to happen, will be happening around April 2020. So it is not possible to have a second round of election very soon because of the winter mainly.
So essentially, and I agree with you because I also had a sense that if because of winter you can't have the second round, then obviously you'll have to wait for the beginning of summer, and that soonest will be April. But does this mean constitutionally that between now and April, Afghanistan does not really have a legitimate government, or does the previous government continue until something really emerges in terms of who is going to form the next government?
Based on the rules, the current government will continue working as it is until the second round has happened. Like we had similar situation in 2014, and former President Hamid Karzai was the president of Afghanistan until the final results of the second round was announced in September. So actually, in 2014, the second term of former President Hamid Karzai was over in June. But since the election went to a second round, so then President Hamid Karzai continued as a president for other 3 months until the second round election was conducted and the results were announced.
Okay.
This will happen the same with this current government, but still there are questions, or people are questioning the legitimacy of the current government. Like right now, people say that President Ghani is not a legitimate president because he should not continue working as a president. But still, it continues the same. There will be always complaints. Like we had complaints against former President Karzai, and we do have complaints against current president about the undermining the legitimacy, but it will continue like this.
Okay, stay with me, Mr. Muzhary. I'm also joined by Mr. Graeme Smith, who's an author and researcher, also worked as a political affairs officer for the United Nations in Afghanistan, and was also a senior analyst for the International Crisis Group. Mr. Smith, thank you for being on the program. We're just talking about the fact that, just a day after the Independent Election Commission announced the results, that the Complaints Commission said that it has received thousands of complaints and they're going to look into those complaints and then decide whether they will, stay with the original announcement or go for a runoff, a second round. How do you read the situation?
Well, yeah, it's a razor-thin margin for Ashraf Ghani, the incumbent. My friend Muzhary in Kabul is absolutely correct that there's going to be probably just a snowstorm of complaints. The adjudication of those complaints could take about a month or so by the Electoral Complaints Commission. There is no safety valve the way there was in 2014, because back then the Americans were ready to sit down with the winners and the losers and negotiate some sort of a power-sharing deal to form a unity government. I think there's less appetite for that now amongst the Americans. So I think what you're likely to see is either Ashraf Ghani being declared the winner in the first round, or a runoff, which could take us, into the spring.
It's interesting, Mr. Smith, that you say that the Americans don't have an appetite for that. My own sense is that neither do the Afghans, frankly, because the unity government, when I went to Kabul, talked to the Afghans, they weren't quite impressed by the fact that this is actually a unity government. And when we spoke with Mr. Abdullah, he said that he was not going to be part of any government with Mr. Ghani after the next election. So I don't think there's the appetite for that even among the Afghans.
Yeah, this is speculation at this point, but I think there's widespread thinking in Kabul when I was just there a couple of weeks ago that the venue for compromise this time around could be the political process with the Taliban. Because if there is to be some sort of negotiation where the Taliban side sits down and the anti-Taliban side sits down and they decide the political future of Afghanistan, then who gets to be part of that anti-Taliban team is an interesting question. Who will represent the opponents of the Taliban? Surely it can't be just the occupants of the presidential palace, but then who else should be invited?
Yeah, that's one of the key questions, and this might just be a sticking point. But let me go back to Mr. Muzhary. Mr. Muzhary, Mr. Smith talked about the talks with the Taliban. It's kind of, we're slightly jumping ahead of the curve, but yes, at some point, that's likely to happen. But here's the thing. If the political situation in Kabul does not really see some kind of resolution, then the Taliban will be further in a stronger position and they'll say, we want to talk, but who should we talk to? Is that a real concern in Kabul?
The issue of election do need to be finished because currently Afghanistan is dealing with two issues. One is the issue of peace talks. The other is the issue of elections. So the election is something that is easily manageable and it is completely under the control of the government and completely independent. But when I say under control of government, I mean it is not like the same as with the Taliban. But so it should be done. The election should be resolved. Whoever comes, that will be announced by the election. In regards to the peace talks with the Taliban have always been saying, considering the Afghan government not the legitimate government, and even if the election announcement that makes President Ghani as a winner of the election, the Taliban will stick to their stance as they are already. So they say election does not matter for us. The Taliban say for us making peace means sitting with the political parties that are involved in the Afghan politics, like Jamaat Islami, all political parties.
So essentially all political stakeholders. Essentially all political stakeholders. I'll quickly go back to Mr. Smith because I'm left with very little time. Mr. Smith referenced the talks. There's a pause. When do you think it will be, shall I say, unpaused?
In a situation where the politics are this intense, talks never really pause. They just move, formal, informal. I think conversation has been going on between the American and Taliban side pretty much continuously over the last couple of years. And, there are some indications of movement that we might be ready to move finally from this early stage of U.S.-Taliban negotiations onto the big show, onto intra-Afghan negotiations that would include both the government and the Taliban and some other array of political factions.
Thank you. Thank you. It was Mr. Graeme Smith. Thank you to him. Thank you to Mr. Fazal Muzhary. This is all for this week from Indus Special. We shall see you next week at the same time. Meanwhile, for latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news. Good night and goodbye.